this bill assumes a certain situation, and I just need to remind members about what can happen sometimes. When a baby is born with a low probability of survival, the decision whether to put the baby on life support is not determined by the physician alone. There's always a team that's involved in the decision, and most importantly, Mr. Speaker, the parents are involved. For example, there are times when a baby is born without a brain and without a cranium, and life expectancy may be just a few hours or a few days. By voting for this bill, we are inserting ourselves in the decision of the parents in consultation with their doctors, and ignoring the desire of the parents maybe to hold their baby for the few times, the few hours, or the few days that they have. This bill would essentially require that that baby be put on life support. And instead of the mother having an opportunity to hold that baby, it's going to be more difficult. Because you see, Mr. Speaker, there's a problem with the drafting of the bill. And on line 29, it never refers to the condition of the baby. Essentially, this bill requires that a non-viable baby be put on life support. Mr. Speaker, there are tough decisions, and unfortunately we face them always in life. Oftentimes it's at the end of life when we're deciding what happens with our loved ones. But sometimes, unfortunately, it happens at the beginning of life. This bill represents yet another time when politicians interfere with the decisions of parents. The delegate from Culpeper yesterday stated that he wants us to vote for the bill because essentially what I heard is it will tell physicians that it is the policy of the Commonwealth to provide reasonable care. Mr. Speaker, healthcare providers are regulated by the Virginia Board of Medicine, midwives by the Board of Nursing and the Board of Medicine. I will tell you, and I just want you to reflect, if you've had a parent where you had to make the decision. I will personally tell you all, and some of you all know, I had to make a decision about my own mother. But I was free to make a decision without the interference of our government. I was free to make that decision. And what we are essentially saying is that the few hours, and unfortunately it happens, that a parent will have with their baby, you're saying, no, that can't happen. We have to go another direction. This is a big, dangerous bill, Mr. Speaker, and I would say that it is not needed, and I ask our members vote no on this bill.
The delegate from Culpeper, Delegate Freitas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking of the bill.
The delegate has the floor.
So, this bill really does kind of show us where the status of the debate is on a number of issues with respect to the preservation of innocent human life. Because the typical arguments that we see coming from the other side of the aisle with respect to issues of abortion cover things like it's just a clump of cells, or it's the woman's body, or we're interfering in between the woman and her doctor. But this bill, Mr. Speaker, says that after the child is born as a result of a failed abortion attempt, so the abortion failed, it didn't work, the child was born anyways, we expect the doctor to take reasonable measures in order to try to save the child's life. Now, as far as the province of the parent, that still exists. Nothing in this law changes that. But we are certainly telling a medical professional that we do expect them to intervene at that point because they do have a patient. It's called the child. And for anybody that thinks that we don't need this, well, I have no less an authority than Governor Ralph Northam, who described in detail what would potentially happen. A child would be born, a child would be made comfortable, and then a conversation would ensue. And Mr. Speaker, I know that part of this process, part of the deliberative process is to talk about some of the scenarios. But let me give you a scenario that I actually am familiar with. Because I stood there and I held up a woman who has cerebral palsy as a result of multiple attempts to abort her. As she gave a speech and talked about her experience of being left on a table to die. And thankfully, someone actually broke protocol at that particular clinic and chose to save her life. Mr. Speaker, the only conversation that should be ensuing in that moment when the child manages to survive an attempted abortion on him is for the doctor to intervene and provide care. And I don't think that's too much to ask. So if we can't agree on this, if we can't agree, again, take out all the other arguments, not a clump of cells. I mean, I don't agree with that argument at conception, but okay, fine. After the child is born, even then, we're not going to insist that a doctor intervene in order to provide a reasonable level of care or get them to a medical facility where they can receive that sort of care? Mr. Speaker, the vote we're about to take will tell us the true status of where this debate lies in the Commonwealth.